John, great to have you back on the podcast, this time about a book. Tell me about this book. Tell me about its genesis.
Well, so the book is called I'll Settle For Nothingness, Conversations with Mike Hodges. And it's basically a collection of conversations, extended kind of email conversations that I have with Mike Hodges, who is a legendary British filmmaker who's most famous, obviously, for Get Carter and Flash Gordon. Those were his two kind of really kind of big films, but generally an output of very kind of respected work. And Mike died 3 years ago, actually, I think this week, at the age of 90. And in the last kind of, I guess, 4 or 5 years of his life, we made friends. Kind of like it was a very big surprise to me to find out that Mike was a friend. But I had written a book about his film Morons From Outer Space, which is one of my, people use the word guilty pleasures, but I'm against that.
It's just a pleasure. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, if you love a film, you love a film. For whatever reason, you connect with it. And Morons is a film that I connected with. I saw it on opening weekend in 1986 in an empty cinema with me and my parents and nobody else. Huge. And the film absolutely died on its ass. It was a critical flop. It was supposed to be Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones, their launch into cinema. And so they were very famous British comedians. It was going to be this huge film. And it was a comedy, and it was kind of a satire, and it's wonderful. And if you love science fiction, which I know your viewers love science fiction, you should watch it, because it's up there. It's like Spaceballs. You know, it's an equivalent Spaceballs, whereas Spaceballs is mocking Star Wars, Morons From Outer Space is mocking Spielberg's films, is mocking Close Encounters and E.T. And the premise of the film is, what if we made contact with aliens, and instead of being superior beings, they were like us? They were just everyday idiots. And it's actually turned into, it's been kind of fulfilled in society, because we're in a society right now where, without being too rude, the stupidest people have the highest technology. Is it crazy, so crazy an idea that some civilization has created space travel, and 4 idiots have got into a spaceship, hired a spaceship for the weekend, and gone where they shouldn't go? So we make contact with aliens, and they're just like us. They're human beings. They look like human beings. They act like stupid human beings. And it parodies all of the Spielberg kind of things. Very sharp film, but it's very broad as well. People weren't ready for it. People didn't really see what was going on with it. I loved it, even as a kid. And so it stayed as one of my favorite films. Still not available on Blu-ray.
What was that, about 84, 85, was it?
I think it might have been 86. It might
was it, yeah.
5 came out in 86, I think. It's around then. Still not on Blu-ray, criminally. It's on Amazon Prime right now, but I think it's a standard definition. I tried to get a Blu-ray made of it, and there was no HD master for the film.
Right.
So it's been very overlooked. I loved the film. I wrote a book about it. I had interviewed Mike when I worked at the BFI, and I'd used part of the interview in the book. But when I was doing the interview, I felt like I'd pushed too hard. He really didn't like Morons From Outer Space. He hadn't seen it since the day he'd finished it. I don't think he watched it at the premiere. He had a Leicester Square premiere, but it was dead 3 days later, you know.
Right.
And although he was up, I was interviewing him about his science fiction films in general, which he made a few. And when we got to Morons From Outer Space, he was kind of game for about 5 minutes. And then I asked him another question, and he literally said, I think we've talked enough about this. And I felt horrible. Like very shut down and kind of like, oh God, I've really offended and upset him. So when I wrote the book, I didn't actually contact him. I just used part of the interview that I'd done with him. And then one day on my website, I got an order for 20 copies of the book from Mike Hodges. So I emailed him and said, look, you don't have to buy this. I'll send you as many copies as you want. I'm kind of sorry I didn't contact you. I kind of felt like you had an issue with Morons. And he said, well, I kind of did, but you know, I'd still like to read the book. And after reading the book, he got back in touch with me, and he said, you've made me want to watch the film again.
Wow.
And it was kind of like, okay, great. I was like, well, you should watch the film. You know, I'll send you a copy. He didn't have a copy of the film. And then this weird thing happened where we just started emailing all the time, because he loved films so much, and inevitably we'd get in these conversations about films. And then I just said to him, because when I'd been writing the book, I went and interviewed Griff Rhys-Jones. I spent hours with Griff, and it was really good. And Griff then got in touch with Mike, and they hadn't spoken since the day they finished the film, because they argued. They had a very bad relationship, and they started going out as friends and seeing each other. And then I kind of said to the pair of them, well, why don't we do a screening? It's never been screened anywhere in the world since it came out in cinemas. There aren't many films you can say that of. I said, let's do a screening. And they were both up for it. And we did a night at the UP Ernst Charles Cinema. And we got moved into the bigger cinema because it sold out completely. It was a sold out screening. And everyone, the audience, loved it. Because it's funny. And when you watch a funny film with an audience, it gets crazy.
Yeah.
So for Griff and Mike, they were practically crying by the end of it, because they were like, this is a good film. And they had both, Griff had blamed it for ruining his life.
Wow.
Like, Griff wanted to be a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And after that, he wasn't. Well, weirdly, Mel Smith went on and became a very successful director.
Yeah. Yeah.
Griff blamed Morons for they both saw this film as a terrible film. They watched it with an audience. The audience loved it. We did a cracking Q&A afterwards on stage, and it was fun and it was funny. And afterwards, they were both just kind of so happy. And me and Mike just stayed in touch. We were just, after that, we were just friends, and we were emailing constantly. And at one point, I just said to him, I just love these emails. And I just think we could do a really interesting book in this format, just not standard interviews. I've done a lot of those, but the way we converse on email is interesting. Maybe we could do something with it. And he was up for it. He was doubtful. He was in a place mentally where he just felt very left behind by people. He felt particularly appreciated. But he said, yeah, let's do it. And we did it. And then for years, we just had this extended email going backwards and forwards, talking about everything, talking about his career, my career, life, politics, art, everything. And sadly, we did finish it a couple of months before he died. There was a definite, we have now finished. That's a great end to this. But yeah, he then died, and then I got busy with other projects, and it's taken me kind of 3 years to get to the point where I've had some space to actually edit it. Because I thought at the time, it would be very charming to just print the kind of emails.
Yeah.
But you know how long emails get. And
yeah.
12 emails back, and pages and pages. So it's taken a lot of editing to not edit out what anyone said, but edit it into actually a kind of straightforward forward and backwards. So we had to kind of almost lose the email format, which was kind of the point of it. But the conversation is still there.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who just loves cinema, I mean, firstly, me and him both love cinema. There's a lot of talk about the industry and about films in general. But if you're interested in him and his films, there's a whole story there. It's really interesting. He had a fascinating career.
He did. I mean, he was never sort of tied down by genre. I mean, he leapt across so many different things. I mean, you got sci-fi, comedy, psychological thriller, political thriller, gangster movies. I mean, it's pretty amazing, really, because so many directors do get pigeonholed, but he seemed to avoid that.
Totally. He was incredibly versatile. I mean, he came from that generation. He was born in, I guess, the 30s. And I think if you were kind of working before the kind of late 70s, maybe, at that point, if you were a director, directing was kind of a job. It wasn't, this kind of auteur thing was it was in the ether and stuff. But I think until kind of Spielberg and Scorsese and stuff, there wasn't that thing where you were kind of defined by your work and you were the person who made these kind of films. I mean, if you look at the Ealing films, those directors were just assigned randomly, to whatever was being made in the studios at the time.
Yeah.
Even old Hollywood films, someone like Stanley Donen, you just go, wow, you did musicals, you did Star Trek, the motion picture, it's completely kind of, it was more about the leadership of directing. Mike had by the time he moved into cinema, he had made a lot of TV, a lot of kind of early TV documentaries, and he'd done some drama as well. So he was very well kind of positioned to do anything. And it was really his intelligence that was the key to everything. It was, if he was interested in something, then he would make something really good. And yeah, very versatile, but also very kind of, I mean, he was very self-effacing.
Yeah.
to an annoying degree. I would say you would never, if you met him in the street and had a chat with him, you would not think he was who he was. He did not wear his prestige or legend at all. He had no time for that. He loved to talk about films and how he made his films, but he had no ego whatsoever. Absolutely nothing. And actually his view of his career was that it was messy and disorganized, which surprised me hugely.
Which I'm sure is the case for a lot of directors.
As soon as you start talking to people honestly and you start peeling back the kind of layers, we talked when I did the Christopher Lee film the last time that we talked. I was telling you that like what interested me was making a film about how even someone as strong as Christopher Lee is someone who actually, when you look at it, he was very insecure.
Yeah, he's quite a fragile guy in many ways, and many people in that industry are, aren't they? Yeah.
And that's one thing that interests me, is just finding this kind of human layer. Mike, he would wear that on his sleeve. Like when you talk to him, he would say quite openly that he didn't think he'd had the career that he'd hoped for. And one of the most interesting sections in the book, which I really like, is that I pressed him a lot to talk about the projects that didn't make it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, because for every film a director makes, particularly from that period, there's another 10 that never got anywhere near. I mean, speaking to Joe Alves, he's got drawings from 20 movies that he never got paid for,
Exactly.
Because they just didn't get out of development, yeah.
I mean, there's a book in that, someone should write a book about unproduced films, and Mike had loads of them, and because he was respected, these projects were at a point where they had people attached to them, where it came incredibly close to kind of making these films. There was a really interesting story where he was going to make a film about Orson Welles doing the kind of the Mercury Theatre kind of period of his career. The radio, the War of the Worlds kind of radio broadcast. I'm trying to remember if I'm getting this exactly right, but basically they decided that Tim Robbins would be a good guy to play Orson Welles, and he was doing very well at that point in his career. One of those guys at that point where you could make a film.
Yeah.
And then Tim Robbins basically just said, "I love it, but I want to direct it." And Mike kind of, well, I guess I have to step aside. And they made it, and it was a terrible film. But it's really interesting to find out these things, to find out what's kind of going on that we didn't find out about. And Mike had a lot of that.
Yeah.
And actually, what I found was it's more interesting to look at it in a kind of holistic career, in a holistic sense, not just at looking at the films that actually got made, but working between and saying, well, that film actually got made because this film didn't get made.
Yeah.
And this film could have been stunning.
Yeah. And you really you come to appreciate those films that are really successful, what a fluke they are in some ways, like this confluence of all these things that have to come together to make it that good, like everybody doing their job to, such a degree that when it does come out, that it just all slots together. It's very rare for that to happen, which is why we're still talking about films like, behind you now, Jaws, RoboCop, and movies like that. Do you find that difficult to talk about that stuff, about the films not being made?
He liked talking about that.
Did he? Yeah.
Once I got him open, he really enjoyed it. Because Mike actually was, like all of us, we're kind of a contradiction and stuff. Mike was deliciously grumpy. He's a lovely man, really genuinely kind, generous, funny, a lovely company. So I'm not saying he's grumpy like he was a grumpy person. But if you got him on a rant, it was a wonderful thing. And he, especially, at the time, a lot of the time we're talking was when that period where the Tory prime ministers were like cycling and Trump was coming, and he would just, I would get an email just started, "Have you seen the news today?"
And does the book include stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. I only took out like either stuff that would be incredibly boring about our personal lives, or stuff which it wouldn't have been fair to other people to put in. Although I've kept in a lot of both of our bitchiness, which I think is interesting. And he didn't mind this at all. But like you very much find out who he didn't like and who I don't like. And some of that surprised me. He went on a rant about Richard Attenborough.
Really?
Which amazed me. And I was just kind of like, I kind of like Richard Attenborough, you know.
Had he worked with him like when he was in TV or
He
something?
hadn't worked with him at all.
Right.
The initial cause of his Richard Attenborough rant, we were talking about all-star films. We were talking about those kind of films you don't really get anymore, where they pack the cast with kind of very famous people. I think we were talking about that time in the 90s when Miramax was really doing that, where films were coming out on like DVD in the rental shop when I had the video shops. There were films like, I'm trying to remember the name of it. There was Bottle Shock, which was a film about wine.
Yeah.
And it's got Alan Rickman, and it's got huge people in these films.
Right.
Yeah, they would come out and you'd go, how is a cast this big?
Right. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, I thought you just meant generally films that are populated with big, old movie stars.
The thing that set these ones aside was more that you would rent it going, wow, Alan Rick. There was a film about CBGBs.
Yeah.
Have like loads of famous people. And you go, this looks like the most amazing film. And then you'd watch it and you'd realize that what it actually was all these people had done favors for Harvey Weinstein or whoever was producing it. And they would be it was obvious that they'd been on set one day.
Yeah.
And maybe it was filmed where they hadn't been with the other actors and it was kind of cut in and they would have one scene and that was it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was talking about those for some reason. And then he went on a rant about a bridge too far. And he was just like, and oh, what a lovely war as well.
Mm-hmm.
And just going, well, you know, Richard Attenborough killed these things by taking things which had great actors in them and just replacing the tiny roles with very famous people,
right.
Which means that when you're watching it, you're not actually in the film. You're just going, oh, it's him. Oh, it's him. Oh, it's him. And A Bridge Too Far, he found actually offensive to people who've been in the war. Because I think he described them as like honey wagon gits or something. It was kind of, he was like the idea of these very multi-million, millionaire stars coming in for one day and pretending to be a war hero and then disappearing.
I kind of want a glossary of Mike Hodges' turns of phrase then in the back.
I might be over-egging the pudding with that. But yeah, he was always kind of funny, and his grumpiness was always kind of very funny. We had a good talk about Robert Altman at one point and how it worked with actors. And I think I said, Altman was brilliant and the actors loved him. And he said, but Altman was brilliant. But unfortunately, he paved the way for Julian Fellows.
Wow. So he's not holding back.
Not at all.
But was he kind of self-aware of the reputation he had, with Get Carter and Flash Gordon particularly? Because I think people sort of know those films, but they couldn't necessarily name the director offhand, like your general movie fan. But was he aware that he had that kind of...
Right, as well, that he had made those two films. He was aware, like so towards the end of his life, both Get Carter and Flash Gordon kind of were retrospectively kind of hailed, and they kind of had re-releases and were and they'd become kind of cult films.
They ended up in lists in those sort of 90s movies magazines, didn't they? Top 10, top 100. Yeah.
And I think he spent a lot of his last years talking about Get Carter and Flash Gordon. That was, which he was happy to do because he really loved both of those films, and he was responsible for those films, for why those films are the way they are. It wasn't, he wrote the script for Get Carter, but it wasn't in the original book. He adapted that book. And Flash Gordon was not, he's the one who put all of the kind of like crazy sexiness in it and the kind of the weird colors. And for him, he always, like the great directors do, he was always aware of what he was saying to the audience and what he was exploring. And Flash Gordon for him was about American foreign interest. It was an allegory. And although Flash is a good character, Flash is the prototypical American going into a situation and saying, I can sort this out.
This is how it should be done.
By myself.
Yeah.
That's how he saw it. He saw Flash as an allegory for American foreign kind of policy and stuff. So to answer your question, he was aware of the respect that those films had. And he loved those films, so he was always happy to talk about them, and he was happy that they were kind of in the spotlight. And also certainly with Flash Gordon, he got a chunk of money every time anything happened with it. So he was very happy to push it kind of ahead with that. But his frustration lay in the fact that his other films were not just kind of overlooked, but unavailable.
Yeah.
And the big one for him was The Terminal Man, which was his kind of Hollywood movie, which Only in March, Arrow finally put out an amazing special edition Blu-ray of it. And it's the first time where you go, okay, this is a significant piece. People just haven't seen it. Warner Brothers had they had no faith in it at all. They marketed it horribly. And it was sci-fi before Star Wars. So that was always...
Yeah, it was like 73, 74, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a tricky kind of time to a degree anyway. But, the film was a very stark, cold film about what was happening with medicine, and the idea that there were kind of that there were kind of electronic, digital things coming through medicine, and it's questioning kind of humanity and what happens when you kind of intersect to that degree. And they didn't know how to market it at all. And they marketed it. I mean, I think he says in the book, the poster had George Segal floating in the air with lightning bolts coming out of his arse.
He did actually, didn't he?
What? And there's no point at which George Segal floats or lightning bolts come out of his arse. This is not well.
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick loved it. Stanley
Really?
Kubrick named it as one of his favorite films.
Wasn't it Michael Crichton as well, wasn't it?
Michael Crichton wrote the original book, but he wasn't very involved.
He wasn't involved, right.
And Mike adapted it a lot. It doesn't, I don't think it bears much resemblance to the book.
But Kubrick loved it.
Kubrick adored it. And in fact, Kubrick petitioned Warner Brothers on Mike's behalf. He said, this is a really good film. You should give it a proper release. But they just didn't. And it was unavailable for years. I mean, decades since it came out. There's a bit in the book where he says, I hope it gets released before I die. And it didn't. And that really upsets me. But also, I mean, the other thing that kind of upsets me is that when it did come out in March, it came out with, I mean, and this is not impugning Arrow at all. It's a great,
they do some great stuff. Yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, I love them. And in fact, they're one of the few people who are rescuing films like this. But when it came out, it was not embraced by the film community. It really upset me. I really thought this is the moment.
I didn't know it had come out, honestly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a real shame. And I'm, I think the book has a niche appeal. That's why I'm self-publishing and stuff. But I think Mike's last wish, and what if there is, I mean, he didn't believe in anything after death, but if there is anything after death and he looked down, I know that his big wish is that the Terminal Man would have been re-evaluated on his own terms and taken what it is. And I think it's an important piece of filmmaking. I think it's wonderful. And there's no film like it,
And do you think that's one of the films that he sort of had the best time making or something? Is there something about the experience itself, do you think?
He had the worst time making.
Did he?
He hated it. It was a horrible experience. He had gone to LA, so he'd done Get Carter, and he'd done Pulp, which was a follow-up to Get Carter with Michael Caine as well, but it was like a comedy. And this was his first Hollywood film, and it was his first big chance. But he had a young family at home who he had to leave at home. And he hated LA. Culturally, it wasn't, he found it very isolating. And I think he struggled to kind of make friends. And I think that actually comes through in the film. I think the film conveys it. And he got very into Edward Hopper, who he discovered when he went to LA at that time. And there's a lot of that in it as well, which is also, isolated, big places, people sitting by themselves and stuff. So no, he didn't actually enjoy the making of it, but he of all of his films, I think it was the one that he was the most proud of. He had letters from Kubrick and from Terrence Malick. Malick sent him a letter, which Mike emailed me 3 separate times. I mean, you knew that was he was most kind of proud of it. And Malick had written him just to say, this is one of the best films I've ever seen. And when you've got Kubrick and
That's
Malick,
amazing.
One of the best films ever made, the idea that it's obscure, even to cineasts, is really upsetting.
Yeah, we've had this conversation too late for me to add it to my Christmas list, John. That's the most depressing thing. I'll have to buy it myself. So during your conversations with him over the years that you were chatting via email, as you said, he donates his sort of archive to the BFI, right? Did that happen during the time that you were chatting?
Yeah, it was It was his office archive. So the BFA, it's brilliant that they do this, but they do it a lot. I think there's someone who works there whose job it is to reach out to aging filmmakers and essentially say, have you thought about where this is all going to go? You know, Mike knew that it was important, but it also was stressful for him. Mike, the first thing, when you read the book, the first question I ask him when we're going to write this book, here we go. Here is the first email of us writing this book. The first question I ask him is, would you make another film? Are you done? And the first thing he says is, no. Like, I would want to make another film. I am a filmmaker. I have all my marbles. He talks about watching a documentary when he was younger of John Huston directing his last film on an oxygen tank. You know, and he's just like, I could still do this. The industry don't want me. He goes into a long talk about why he basically stopped making films, what the industry started doing to him to stop him making films. Mike also, he never, you know, at 90, he was, I don't sound patronizing, but he was sharp as a tack. You know, nothing had changed in his mind at all. And his body was starting to fail, but his mind hadn't changed at all. So to him, it was very frustrating. He was still an artist. He was still having these thoughts. He was still writing. He was still making a film up until the day he died. Yeah. And we go into that in the book. And in fact, if you buy the special edition of the book, you get a reproduction of the script of what he was working on when he died, which is an amazing autobiographical video essay about everything in life, about his just philosophy, you know, called All at Sea, and it's amazing. And he actually made I guess you'd call it a work in progress, where he had recorded his voiceover for it, and he was using very rough bits of library footage that he had found in different places. And I've seen that, and it's very moving, and it's amazing. And I'm still talking to the production company who were behind it. You know, they just couldn't get funding for it. You know, they just couldn't get funding. And you look at it and you just go, this is the last film of a cinematic legend.
Yeah.
Why is the BFI not throwing money at this, especially since they took his archive and they did a retrospective season for him? Why are they not funding this? To them, it's a drop in the ocean, especially when they've got all that library footage that could be kind of used to do it. My dream is, and I've not spoken to anyone about this properly, but like, you know, my dream is I would like to finish that film.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question. Yeah. Yeah.
That I would very much like to do that, because I know how much you wanted it out there, and we talked a lot about that. So yeah, he was ambivalent. He knew that he should give the archive to the BFI, and he gave it to them. But also, you know, to him it was just like, I'm not done. You know, I'm not dead yet. And the other thing that was very frustrating to him was that the BFI had planned a retrospective season, which was supposed to happen when COVID happened. And a lot of our conversation was kind of happening through COVID. And he was aware that the clock was ticking and health was declining. And, you know, he actually says in the book, there's a bit where he just goes, they keep telling me that they're going to do it and it's going to be rescheduled. But he's like, I don't know if I'll even be able to go.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen. And at the end of it, he made it to, he was so ill, but they did an on stage with him. Samira Ahmed interviewed him on stage, and he was well enough to go to that. He wasn't well enough to go to most of the films. Although I think he actually did Morons From Outer Space. I think he made that one, but it was kind of patchy health in that time. And he wrote to me after, like, we spoke the day after, and he was just like, that felt like a good end to my career.
Nice.
You know, that was a good interview, and that felt like a good end to my career. And that wasn't too long before the end, really.
There comes a point where you do have to flick that switch and go, right, what is my legacy? And did the material that you got from him, the conversations you had with him, did they change for you emotionally or editorially once he had passed away?
No, because it was finished then, and I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to edit him. He would have hated to have been edited.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to go back to what you were just saying, one of the things that's in the book is halfway through the book, he literally says to me, John, I'm bored of myself. I don't want to do this anymore. He said, I'm so sorry, but I don't want to do this. I'm bored of myself. I'm bored of talking about myself. And I said, that's fine. And we stopped. And we obviously carried on being in touch.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few months later, I can't remember what the actual email was. It's in the book, where he basically then just goes, you know what? You've just lit a fire under me. Let's start the book again. There's
Okay.
more I want to say. And it starts up again, which is really kind of lovely.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, what we both do and what we have in common is that we both have a passion for cinema history.
Mm.
And we understand that these people have not been well served in their interviews, that there's more to someone's work, their life as well. And I think it's a great service that you're doing to Joe. And it's something that I've been passionate about in my career as well, is talking to older people, but facilitating them, not just to trot out the anecdotes that they've trotted out for 50 years, but to actually go behind those and kind of go, actually, I'm more interested in you as a person. You don't have to be on autopilot.
Yeah.
No, let's do something that you'll be proud of.
Yeah.
It's an interesting term to say a portrait, but let's do
it. And it takes a while to get to that, doesn't it? To break through those anecdotes that people have been reeling out for decades. And it means spending a lot of time with them. It means creating a strong relationship with them. And always kind of reminding yourself and them that it's a two-way street, isn't it? Yes, you are making a book out of this with your name on it, but it's also about celebrating them. And that's the key part here, isn't it? I mean, I mostly make myself invisible with the stuff I do. And that's sort of important to me because I want the people to speak. But doing it as a conversational book, you have to bring yourself into that as well. But what's great about that is that you've got this legacy of your own as well, of making those films about people that have worked in the industry. So that carries a weight as well, for sure.
I mean, that's the first time that I've done that. I mean, in my films, I hate documentaries where you see the filmmaker in the documentary. Right? That's something I've always hated. So I'm not present in my, you don't hear, I mean, maybe, I think in Elstree, the final question, you actually hear me ask the question because there was no way of editing it without having
that happens sometimes. Yeah.
But like, I don't like to be kind of present in that kind of way. But with this one, it was different. And I also, there was a book that my mum got me when I think I was a teenager. If not, it would have been like just when I was going to film school. It was the kind of 90s, early 90s. There's a great book. I don't know if it's even still available anymore. I love it. I read it often. It's called Conversations with Billy Wilder by Cameron Crowe. And it was so
interesting. It's a great book. Yeah.
It's amazing.
I've got it downstairs. Yeah.
It's so great. What's particularly interesting is Billy Wilder was not really working at that point. He was done, his career was done, but he was still going into the office every day. And Cameron Crowe was a working filmmaker. And it was a genuine conversation. And with Mike, I felt the confidence to add myself to it because firstly, it had come out of our genuine conversations of which I'm half. But secondly, there's a really interesting thing where you go, okay, at that point, when we started, I was 44 and he was 88. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then his last feature film, which was I'll Sleep When I'm Dead, was I think 2003. I think that was kind of the same year that my first screen credit on IMDb kind of comes in. It was like screenwriting on Lex, but his career was ending while mine was beginning. And I'm half his age. But we have these very much on the level conversations. And I think that's an interesting part of the book is where we start comparing, experiences. And the things that made him leave the industry were things which were expected as I entered the industry. It was the culture, and I would never have questioned it. But to him, it was shocking that these things were happening. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there where we're kind of comparing experiences about kind of how things are. And also it's nice to see, I think there were probably I think during the conversation, I was making Hollywood Bulldogs, I was making Real Britannia, and I published the Méliès book. So you also get his reactions to those things. I was talking to him while we were making them and stuff. And there was a whole conversation kind of going on with that. And you get to see kind of how supportive he was as well. Just, how kind of lovely he was. And in fact, one of our mutual sadnesses was that he wasn't well enough to be in Real Britannia. We had all these incredible, legendary British filmmakers. And Mike was my friend, but we couldn't get him in because he was just too ill to come to London, do the interviews, and then there wasn't time to go out. He lived out in the country, and there just wasn't time to get out to him, or he wasn't well enough when there was time.
Yeah,
and that I've always been upset about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he found it very funny that Mike Leigh was in it because he knows how much I dislike Mike Leigh. He was very kind of like, he kind of needled me about that.
I'm looking forward to reading this. I really am. So where can people find this? You said you're self-publishing.
It's on Kickstarter right now. If you Google Kickstarter Mike Hodges, you'll find it. It's called I'll Settle For Nothingness. And yeah, it's all done. We're a week into the campaign and we're almost at 60% funded. So I think it's pretty definitely going to happen. The book is written and finished and kind of ready to go, so that's not an issue. We've got Simon Minter, who was the designer on the Méliès book. He's going to come in and do all the inlay and design for it and stuff. And yeah, it's just going to be really good. We're going to make a really beautiful book, and it's just going to commemorate Mike in a way that I think he deserves to be commemorated, which is in his own words. You know? And also, it's just I think it's a really kind of cracking read just for anyone who loves films and interviews and conversations. And like I say, it goes off into all different places about kind of life and art and politics and philosophy. And you actually see how it's a kind of holistic thing, how actually that's the stuff that actually informs filmmaking as well. And you see how it all fits together with, you know, the people who make films, how they fit together with the films they make, how they bring in the outside influences kind of into it. So like, I just think it's going to be a really kind of lovely book. I'm really happy with it.
Nice. And there's different tiers, presumably, that people can...
It's just two. It's like a really simple campaign. So it's just 2 tiers where you can just get the book, or you can get the special edition. And the special edition is basically a signed copy of the book. You get these film cards, which are... I sourced these amazing 1970s 35mm film reels of... Flash Gordon and Get Carter. They were the original trailer reels from an old cinema. They'd just been sat in an old cinema. So we've cut those kind of up, and you get cards with the original 35mm kind of things in, and quotes from Mike about the films on the cards. And then, as I said, you get the full 78, I think, page reproduction of his script for All at Sea, which he's also illustrated. So there's kind of photos the whole way through. Right. So you really get a feeling of what that project was. And like I say, because it's autobiographical, you know, you get the whole kind of spiritual story of him. Because his life before filmmaking was amazing as well. You know, he came from like the Navy and stuff. And it was really his experiences in the Navy of seeing poverty all around the British Isles that led him to kind of Get Carter, especially in the first place. So that's a beautiful project in itself. And just getting the script out there. I've been working with the production company who were making it, and they've given us kind of full permission to reprint the script. So people will at least get to see that. And Mike's sons have given the film the blessing. They've been great. Sorry, given the book the blessing. So yeah, it's a nice package. And if you've ever enjoyed any of his films, which I think people have, it's
And even if you haven't, John, like this is a way to discover them, right? I mean, this is a way to discover a new layer. I mean, there's nothing I love more than like when I was a kid in the like 80s and 90s when Channel 4 would show a season of a director. And I'd just be like, tape in, you know, who's this Kurosawa guy? Who's this Scorsese guy? You know, who's this Fincher guy? Whatever it was. And I think this book is a good sort of route into that for people to kind of work through his filmography of what is available at least, and maybe get some pressure on getting those things that aren't available to actually get a release finally.
Totally. And like, I mean, most of them, he only really made 9 big feature films. And most of them there's still, I mean, like A Prayer for the Dying, I think is not on Blu-ray, which is crazy because that was quite a big film. But it's about kind of getting his filmography and discovering all these films. I mean, like I said, if nothing else, if this brings people to Morons From Outer Space, I'll be happy. Everyone who watches Morons From Outer Space, it's a vindication for me.
You're part of a special group if you see that and love it.
Yeah, actually, there's a great bit in the book where you've dealt with Prop Store with Stephen Lane.
Yeah, I know Stephen. Yeah.
So I knew Stephen a while back, and I'd said to him, Morons From Outer Space, and he goes, "We've never had anything for Morons From Outer Space." He's like, "It's just not a film that's, you know, nothing's come through." And then one day he sent me an email, and he's like, "John, you're going to be very happy." And he did me a deal. He was lovely, but I sent Mike a photo of me in my house with Mel Smith's spacesuit hanging behind me.
Huh.
I bought the original space from Mark's face. And Mike's response was, if it still had his snot in it, would you have bought it? If the helmet was available and it still had his snot in it, would you have bought it? And my response was, I think we both know the answer to that.
Well, for everybody listening and watching, get over to Kickstarter. I'll Settle For Nothingness, Conversations with Mike Hodges by John. And get your money in there and get it. When are you expecting the book to be actually delivered to people?
I think it's going to be kind of April, May kind of time that it'll be actually finished.
So, yeah. So go and buy it now, guys and girls, and, you'll get a little future present from your past self. So, there you go.
Amazing. Thanks, Jamie.